the M60 unleashed utter devastation in Vietnam. It scored thousands of kills on the battlefield. Yet, just 7 seconds after firing the 23-pound gun, the enemy knew exactly where they were, turning it from a battlefield asset to a soldier's worst nightmare. So how did such a powerful weapon turn into a death sentence for those operating it? And how did one man earn the Medal of Honor despite his machine gun jamming? As the Second World War raged on, the United States heavily relied on the M1918 Browning automatic rifle and M1919 A6 Browning machine gun as the squad automatic weapon.
When they handed me the BAR for the first time, I said, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to fight with that weapon. But let me tell you, I loved it.
Yet it wasn't strong enough to have any meaningful impact on tanks. On the other side of the battlefield, the MG42 was far more powerful, used effectively by the Wehrmacht during Operation Barbarossa, following its inception in 1942. The United States needed something to rival the MG42 and FG42, leading to the design of the T-161E3, which later became the M60. In fact, the United States had the option of adopting the proven MG42, but Congress stepped in, preferring something homemade to avoid licensing fees and to support U.S. firms. By 1957, the first M60 was brought into service, immediately being thrust into the Vietnam War, where it would wreak havoc on the battlefield.
You got people running all over the place. You got things happen in a firefight where you're getting shot at and you're shooting at them and the terrain is rough and nothing is ever completely planned out that's going to work exactly the way you...
Due to its bulky size and unrelenting appetite for ammo, the M60 quickly earned the nickname the Pig when it landed in Vietnam, with virtually every squad having at least one of these weapons. But it wasn't just for the troops to carry. The weapon proved so useful that it was mounted on various vehicles as well, like the M113 armored personnel carrier. It became an instant classic, with its high rate of fire and powerful 762 rounds cutting through the dense jungle. Moreover, it was used for suppressing enemy fire, allowing battlefield tactics to effectively play out. It provided the ideal cover for those using the M16 and its smaller 5.56 rounds, packing just that extra bit of punch to prevent the Vietcong from establishing secure positions. And since the M60 was usually on the flank during an attack, it could catch the enemy off guard, but this only lasted a mere 7 seconds before M60 gunner positions became the central focus of the Vietcong. Once the gunner revealed themselves, every enemy soldier pointed their fire in the general direction of the M60, often firing blindly, but this meant that they needed to change position frequently to avoid stray bullets or even rocket-propelled grenades. The gunner had to pack up the 23-pound weapon, including his ammunition that could have easily brought the weight to 30 pounds, and find a new location while under constant fire. Many M60 gunners would lose their lives in the pursuit of retreating or changing position on the battlefield. And speaking of ammo, the M60 had a rate of fire of between 500 and 650 rounds per minute, which meant that the standard 100-round ammo belt became useless after just 11 seconds. Even worse was the fact that the gunner only carried about 2 of these belts, giving him 200 rounds, while the assistant gunner carried another few ammo belts and a spare barrel. Finally, there was the ammo bearer, cleverly called the Mule in Vietnam. His job was simple: carry as much ammunition as humanly possible, usually in ammo boxes. But everyone chipped in, with each squad member carrying at least one belt for the M60. It meant that a squad would carry more than 1,000 rounds for just a single gun. Yet despite its high rate of fire, one of the biggest weaknesses of the M60 was to accurately judge whether the gun was firing at the right target. Much like other machine guns, a tracer was usually the 4th or 5th bullet. These tactics proved incredibly useful, even at night, with the tracers being ideal for helicopters to see where friendly troops are and to ensure the M60 was at least firing in the right general direction. It became one of the most feared weapons for the Vietcong and North Vietnamese, who'd quickly learn that if they were to do something, they needed to take control of these M60 gunners. As more and more destruction rained down on Vietnamese positions, the whole tactic of the Vietcong changed. One of their first tasks was to immediately identify M60 gunner positions, which is why they essentially became bullet magnets. Ambushes focused on weeding out these gunners, where the Vietnamese would focus all their fire on that single position. Even snipers were trained to focus on the M60 gunner, eventually leading to mass gunner casualties. Since a squad consisted of 2 machine gun teams, each with a machine gunner, an assistant gunner, team leader, and grenadier, with 1 or 2 riflemen attached to each unit, losing someone proved extremely costly. Each team member carried at least 1 ammo belt, often 2 crisscrossing each other over the shoulders, almost making them look like Rambo. Yet this is where some of the fatal flaws of the M60 became a massive problem that often killed its crew. Since the jungle of Vietnam was extremely dense, moving through it proved a massive challenge. Not only did they have to look for booby traps, but carrying ammo belts meant that soldiers collected a few dirty twigs and even dirt that got lodged in between the bullets. If a gunfight broke out and the first belt was depleted, newer soldiers simply just gave the next belt. But if it wasn't clean, the dirt and twigs often jammed the gun, leaving them vulnerable and exposing the position. It was only the experienced soldiers that later realized using metal boxes, often used for claymores, were extremely effective. They'd string together a few belts, up to 750 rounds at a time, and allowed the gun to directly feed out of the box. Sustained fire was far more manageable, but it didn't really fix the other major problem. The more rounds pushed through the M60 in a short period of time, the warmer the barrel would become. It forced regular barrel changes, which for an experienced operator wouldn't be a problem. In fact, they'd remove the barrel early and let it cool down before cleaning it, while the spare barrel did the job. But this wasn't something everyone did, and if the barrel cooked for too long, it literally blew up, or simply just broke. Even more worrisome was the design of the gun, which was prone to damage from the humid conditions in Vietnam. Mud, rain, and dirt could lead to rust if the operator didn't regularly clean and oil the weapon. In one horrible case, the trigger would get stuck thanks to debris, meaning that even when the operator released the trigger, it was still firing uncontrollably. This was called running away, with the gun seemingly operating on its own, just jumping around and firing in every direction. The main gunner needed to wrestle the gun to prevent any friendly fire, while the assistant gunner yanked on the ammo belt to prevent it from feeding more rounds. It was one of the scariest moments to be around one of these guns, yet it still shifted the tide of battle and created heroes still remembered today. Still a lance corporal at the time, Richard Pittman went above and beyond the call of duty to save his fellow Marines in Vietnam. Serving in the 1st Platoon, Company 1, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. Company 1 found themselves patrolling along a narrow jungle trail near the demilitarized zone. Suddenly, his team came under heavy fire from well-hidden Vietnamese soldiers. Hearing the call for more firepower, Pittman left the sanctity and safety of his platoon, exchanging his rifle for a machine gun and numerous belts of ammunition. He stormed forward, facing heavy small arms fire from the incoming Vietcong, where he'd silence virtually every opposing gunner. Then he learned that about 50 yards down the trail, more wounded Marines were waiting for attention. Pittman rushed to their positions, where he'd set up a position nearby and continued picking off more advancing Vietnamese soldiers. He confronted 40 soldiers, killing most of them until his machine gun jammed. Yet this is where his true bravery kicked in. Pittman took a submachine gun and a pistol he picked up from one of the fallen Vietnamese soldiers, continuing to unload until the enemy had to withdraw, believing they were facing a far superior opponent. Just to wrap it up, he threw his last grenade at the enemy as well before linking up with his platoon. Pittman was awarded the Medal of Honor for his bravery in almost certain defeat, disrupting the Vietnamese ambush and allowing medics and other Marines to evacuate and treat the wounded. His valor and bravery would forever be remembered thanks to this incredible act. Being a machine gunner in the jungles of Vietnam proved deadly. Each gunner had only 7 seconds to react after being spotted, but this was nothing compared to the door gunners, who completely changed the tide of battle. Make sure to check out this video and find out why.